All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your illustrious host, myself, Alex Baquero, and the recently unhatted Chris Kringle Condit, your American villain voices, as always, serving up the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions. Please go follow, like, rate, review, subscribe, all the things down below as we continue to cover this illustrious Villa winning streak. But before we get to Villa's victories, Chris, tell me about your victories this holiday season. How are you doing? Let's take a moment to be grateful for all that has been bestowed upon us in a non-Villa related capacity.
I'm doing great, Alex. We're still alive, which is always a good thing around the holidays. The kids survived Christmas. They have lots of toys from Santa and from family and from friends, and my house is full of stuff. So, if anyone has figured out where I live, come by in a few weeks and there will be a pile of toys out on the, front of the street there for pickup. So come on by and get some free toys, because I'm going to get rid of some stuff. But because that's what happens when you have kids, Alex. Your house just fills up with crap, and eventually you just sneak it out while your kids aren't paying attention, because otherwise your house is just overfilled with stuff. But no, it was great. The kids had a great Christmas. We obviously had a great Christmas. I have some family in town now. Went to one of the best zoos in North America today, in the North Carolina Zoo. We don't get paid for that plug. I'm a long-standing Zoo Society member. I give them a lot more money than they give me, which is to say they give me zero. But it is a great zoo, and if you're ever in North Carolina, it's worth the trip to Asheboro from wherever you are to go to that zoo. And we had a great time there today. My parents went for the first time. Hadn't been there in the decade that we've lived down here, so they very much enjoyed it. And it's so far been a great holiday, and we're roaring into the new year here, both the Condit household and Aston Villa. How are you, Alex?
Well, what about you, Chris? Did you get any new toys? Any you would like to write home about?
I'm going to clue you in on something that probably people have figured out from the pod. I don't ask for much. I'm not really a guy who needs a lot of things or cares about that sort of stuff. But so I got a few new books, and I got a new shirt that I will rock on the pod sometime here. Detroit City FC, and I got some candy and some cooking stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not a guy who's big into material goods most of the time. And I'm not saying that as some highfalutin person. It's just not interesting to me. I'd much rather have a good book, or I got a new cookbook, for the grill, so I can try some new recipes, stuff like that.
What kind of a reader are you, Chris?
Oh, I didn't know you could read it all. So I read a lot of history and biography, things like that. So the couple books that I got a J.P. Morgan biography by Ron Chernow, who is probably my absolute favorite author. And then I got Slow Horses by Mick Herron. So outside of history,
you watch the show?
Biography, I like spy stuff. I like spy novels.
Do you watch the show, or are you?
I have seen the show because I love Gary Oldman. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I also got the James A. Garfield assassination book. I can't remember the name of it or the author, but I've had that on my radar for a while. And Bridget got that for me for Christmas.
I could have guessed, Father, that you would be into biographies and history. And that you would love Gary Oldman, because you are an old man at heart.
That's true. Yes. I just think he's a fantastic actor. He's got a good deal of range.
Yeah, he does. Christmas was good over here, relaxing, watched a lot of movies. I will put a plug out there. We just went to see the new Avatar movie, Fire and Ash. Incredible visually. I won't say none of the Avatar movies.
I was going to say, isn't that pretty much
the right home about from a story writing perspective, right? They're fairly digestible things, but please, everybody, go see this thing in IMAX, because as incredible as the first one was, like, this absolutely matches it. So go to the best theater, best sound that you can, and just enjoy and thank me later. But otherwise, yeah, did a good bit of cooking. Got to just kind of sit on the couch for a little bit, watch a bunch of Christmas movies with the fam and other movies, and just relax. And now we got one more week at home before we get back at it and really dive into infant prep, which thankfully, I think we're a bit ahead of the game right now. Most of the stuff is ready. I don't think you ever feel, you would know better than me, but I don't think you're ever going to feel 100% set and ready for the kid to come. So I've kind of come to acknowledge that and just know we're going to need to do what we can before he ultimately gets here. But Chris, hopefully by the time he gets here, Villa are still on this winning run of him, extended it to, I don't know, 22 games by that point, and it continued over the weekend with another this season comeback victory under Chelsea. Villa extend their lead this year with the most points won from losing positions. I believe we're up to 18 at this point. What I also saw actually was that, and the time period I'm gonna get incorrect. It could be over the past 2 seasons. It could be since Unai Emery was installed, which is probably more likely. Villa actually lead the Premier League in points gained from losing positions. I believe it's 45 or 46, something like that. So really talking about the mentality of the team. We're not here to talk all about that. We're here to talk about the specific one that happened yesterday afternoon. Chris, we spoke as we kind of dive into the lineups, we spoke about a couple different ways that Unai could approach this 4-day stretch last week in our Chelsea preview. And one was, listen, you split the difference, you go all out to win one of these games and kind of say, hey, I'm going to punt the other one. And the other option was to say, hey, I kind of feel like we've got some good strength and depth. I'm going to almost split my forces and do my best to win or come away with a point in both. And I would say when we saw the lineup come out, I think you and I both said that you probably hedge your bets a little bit and rest a couple guys, but go probably a little more all out for Chelsea. And I think we were proven to be right. Onana, the one major absence from the starting 11 with Emi Buendia coming in, as well as Daniel Malen rotating in for Ali Watkins, which has been something that we've kind of done all year long with Malen starting in the Europa League. So it almost seemed like Unai Emery was willing to treat this one like one of the Europa League fixtures, rotate a little bit, but, still clearly with the intent to come away with points.
Yes, he absolutely seemed to want to get a point, at least a point out of this. And I think Onana resting and bringing Buendia on makes a lot of sense from a rotational standpoint. Onana did come on in the second half. But Malen, again, starting up top in place of Watkins, with Rodgers playing as a second striker. Once again, wasn't as effective as you would like. And Malen seems to be better coming off of the bench against tired legs more so than starting outright. But
well, I'm also going to say he's not a number 9. I've been saying this all year long. Like, let's see him. The one game that he started out on the right wing, he scored 2 goals.
Yeah.
So, like, can we ever see him from the off in at least what I would say is his best position on the field and see what he can do there?
Yeah, that's
Spoiler for what I think we might do against Arsenal, by the way.
And also, though, I think when you consider what it looked like Unai Emery was trying to accomplish tactically, which was to sit deep and then play the counter in the first half, the speed, the pace, and power of Daniel Malen made sense in that tactical setup. It just wasn't executed for a couple of reasons. First of all, that Chelsea were winning all their 1v1s. I mean, that in the first half and early second half in particular, Chelsea won pretty much every single 1v1. I mean, they man marked almost exclusively and just said, we are going to be better than you. And they were, by and large. They were helped out by the way the game was refereed, because they were allowed to foul on the counter 3 or 4 times without a single card being produced. So that hurts. But more than that, they won their matchups in the first 45 minutes, 50 minutes of the game, pretty much 100% of the time. My view of it.
Yeah, I guess a couple different things to kind of rewind to Onana. I do wonder to what extent that was no apologies necessary. You were on a roll, and who am I to stop anything related to Villa on a roll? Onana, I think, was also done with one eye to the Arsenal game, not with respect to fitness, although he is liable to get injured when he plays too many minutes, but also due to the yellow card situation. And ultimately, we did see Matty Cash and Boubacar Kamara ultimately pick up those yellow cards. And so I think Unai knew that he needed to be flexible and have some kind of energy that he could bring in to start the match against Arsenal. Amadou Onana being one of those two, the other one being Lamar Bogart. Again, we'll cover this a little bit later. The Daniel Malin Rogers thing I thought was interesting. It makes sense for the reason that you note. The idea was sit deep, soak up pressure, play on the counter, and hope that those two guys with pace can really get in somewhere behind. Unfortunately, the line breaking balls, partially due to Chelsea's ability to foul with impunity, but also due to lackadaisical passing. I think when we were able to release, the passes were not on. Ultimately kind of foiled that plan. What was interesting to me about it was that, Rodgers has been so effective off the left for us over the past few weeks. And obviously was effective for us again once Ollie Watkins came on and he was able to move out there in the second half. I do think that it might have been a bit of a mistake to start Buendia off the left as opposed to Rodgers. You could have kept Buendia in the center and had a little bit more of a focal point to release Daniel Malin down the middle, Rodgers wide left, and then even potentially McGinn wide right. Yeah. So, tactically, I don't think that two of the guys that were hauled off with fairly poor performances, Daniel Malin and Emi Buendia, I don't think that they were necessarily put in the best position to succeed given how Unai Emery set the team up.
I think that you're right. I think that Buendia is a much more natural 10, just playing centrally, whereas Rodgers wants to move from the left. So it makes much more sense. And look, who are we to tell Unai Emery what to do, right?
Sure. But hindsight is 2020, right?
Right. From a purely the way they play standpoint, it seems to make much more sense to put Buendia at the 10, and he's so good at the ball with the ball at his feet. He doesn't have the speed he once did, but he still has the foot skills and I think we described
the ability to operate in close quarters. I think,
yeah,
just going to be in the middle of the field there.
Yeah, I think we described him as sneaky in the early going of the season, where he's a step quicker than you think he is. And his touch with the ball is just so good with the ball at his feet. And then you have Morgan Rodgers naturally coming inside from the left, where he wants to go anyway. So, but anyway, the bigger picture for me in the first half was that Villa.
One other thing, actually, though, Chris, because I do want to get your opinion on this before we get to the bigger picture of the first half. We spoke in the lead up to this about how Chelsea want to dominate possession, and over the past handful of games, it had been even more so. 65 plus, 70 plus % possession in all of these games, and so we said, there's a good likelihood at home that they're really going to dominate the ball. Villa chances being few and far between, playing on the counter like this. Is there potentially a belief from Unai Emery, and this is going to sound silly in retrospect considering that he scored 2 goals, but that if a ball falls to Ollie Watkins or Daniel Malin right now, Daniel Malin is going to be the more likely one to finish that, and knowing that we were going to have potentially limited opportunities, that might be why Malin got the start as well.
That could be, but also I think rotation, it makes sense there. And even though Watkins has not played well this season, largely, this game notwithstanding, Arsenal is one of his favorite targets, and I think Unai Emery knows that too, right? He's going to know that Watkins scores a lot against Arsenal, or seems to score a lot against Arsenal. So I think it made sense from a rotational perspective. The fact that Watkins seems to get up for the Arsenal games each season, and you're right. Maybe he's got a little more trust that Mullen is going to finish. But I'll tell you what, the changes made it happen. We'll get there. Kind of turn that whole theory on its head, right?
Absolutely.
But there were some moments in the first half that we can talk about individually. But I really I want to say the bigger picture of the first half is that Chelsea outplayed Villa massively. And I think Villa were rather fortunate to only be down by 1 goal at the half.
I think so too. Chelsea had a lot of opportunities, and part of this might have been a gamble at their inability to finish. Part of it was Villa riding some luck, but yeah, while the mission might have been, hey, let's concede the ball, let's soak up pressure, let's hit them on the counter. Even if that was the plan, I'm not going to say that Villa executed that plan flawlessly.
Mhm.
They still gave up many opportunities, and to your point, on another day could have been down 3-0, but for Chelsea's poor scoring record, that could have manifested. And so, it was interesting. I saw a tweet from a Chelsea fan after the game who said something to the effect of, the difference is that you have a game of two halves here. First half, Chelsea are on top. Second half, Villa are on top. Second half, Robert Sanchez is active. He's probably Chelsea's most involved player. He's making saves left and right. You see at the end, Villa have something like 8 or 9 shots on target to Chelsea's 3 or 4, as opposed to the first half. Emi Martinez had to make one save.
One
maybe.
really tough save. Really tough save. Yeah.
And the really tough save, I'm not even sure was like an official shot. I think it was a cross that was kind of shanked that caught him out a little bit. So, his point was, we need to do a better job of when we are on top, making it actually count, making it worth it, because they didn't.
Yep.
That being said, we just said Emi Martinez did a great job on that deflected cross. Oh boy, he did not coat himself in glory in giving up this goal off the corner. I think he was way too focused on the players that were around him as opposed to just getting to the ball. And it wasn't even like they were really on them all that much. It was like he was initiating a lot of that contact,
Yep.
looking for the call. And as a result, loses the flight of it, and the ball just kind of sails right in, Douglas Luiz style.
Yeah, I mean, it did take a slight deflection off of João Pedro.
I think João Pedro ultimately got the goal. I think it was going in anyway.
It probably was, but but yeah, it was a terrible, again, a terrible defensive job all around on the corner for that ball just to be able to sail in. But that's 100% on Martinez. That should be a relatively easy catch and release for hopefully a quick counter, given the way that Villa were playing. So that goal is 100% on Emi Martinez. Outside of that, I thought he played very well. But
I agree.
That goal alone was nobody else can be blamed for that one by and large. He's got to catch that ball.
I agree. The only other thing that I want to talk about on the first half is, my God, do I hate Marc Cucurella. I cannot say, and I understand he's one of the best outside backs in the league, if not the world right now, right? He's won the Euros with Spain. Like, he's very good. He's up there with Bruno Fernandes, I think, in like the most punchable faces in the league, just because of the way that he winds everybody up, then flops. Like,
yeah.
If you're going to be a troll, I at least want you to stand on business with it, right? And
none of them do, though. None of them ever do, or very rarely.
But like, if you're going to be a tough guy, be a tough guy. Don't be a tough guy, and then the second somebody touches you, just fall over the way that he does. Yeah. I do think Rodgers should have gotten a yellow for pushing him in the 14th minute. Like, you can't do that. Yeah. As annoying as he is, and as annoying as the flop is, that's absolutely yellow on Rodgers. But still, I hate Marc Cucurella. I do.
I mean, the only reason that I think Rodgers can get away with not getting yellow there was Caicedo had 2 yellow card challenges in that first 15 minutes, and neither of them got booked, right? So like nobody got booked for the first 20 minutes of that match. It seemed like
no one got booked until the
Matty
off.
Cash.
Well, Matty Cash, but then until the offsetting yellows with Reece
Yeah.
James and Morgan Rogers in the second.
Yeah, and Matty Cash's was deserved as well. But yeah, no, I don't like Cucurella. I think he's one of those type of players though that you love him when he's on your team, but when he's not, you absolutely hate him. So he's probably
Emi Martinez to
that's
a certain
exactly what I was
extent.
going to
Right?
say.
Yeah.
Yes. Emi Martinez is probably a good example. But yeah, I like that flopping with Rodgers. Come on, man, have some pride. Come on, just be a man, have some pride. I hate to say be a man, but be a man and have some pride. Don't fall over like somebody shot you when you get a little shove from Morgan Rogers. And I understand that a lot of players do that, but he seems to be the master of that sort of wind up and then whoa, flying backwards like somebody pushed him with the force of 1,000, gravitational pulls of the earth.
And then he just kind of sits there and he sighs.
Yeah.
He, like he took some really hard chat. We're moving on.
Yeah.
Like we said, halftime comes around. Clearly, all Chelsea. Everybody is criticizing Villa. Expected goals is coming true. Villa actually had 0.0 expected goals, and XG philosophy once again said we know how this ends, and he was right. Which I got a nice chuckle out of. You could probably count on one hand how many times we got into the attacking third. I think we had like 5 touches in
I think it was like 8 passes in the final third in the first half. Yeah.
It was insane. And the second half, Chris, starts a lot the same. You thought Villa would come out the half a little bit different, make some adjustments, but it's really not until the 57th minute, so a good 12 minutes in, when Unai makes the sub, switches the formation a little bit, which I'd love to hear you talk about.
Yep.
And then finally Villa get their foothold and absolutely change the tide in this one.
Yes, it changes entirely. And Ollie Watkins called it out in the post-game interview, actually, and I'm sure everybody's seen it at this point. He called Emery a tactical genius because of the substitutions he made. But bringing Watkins on and bringing Tielemans on allows
moving Tielemans up.
What's that? I'm sorry, moving Tielemans up, Rogers to the left, right, and Onana on. Sorry, I made that mistake. Yes, Tielemans moves into the 10. Rogers moves to the left. Watkins at the number 9. Onana is now sitting deep, in the defensive mid. So what that did was, like I talked about a little bit earlier, Chelsea were winning their man matchups, right? They were matched up, man marking exclusively, and they were winning. What that slight change in formation did was overload the Chelsea formation to the left-hand side and gave, Watkins said in the interview, it gave us an extra man up there. And so that's where you saw now all the attacks coming from. And honestly, at points in that second half, shout out to EB10 on Twitter. He either put a compilation together or got it from somewhere of Morgan Rogers and Yuri Tielemans. Just it looks like a training exercise. The way they're passing the ball to each other with almost no tackling from Chelsea. That change from Unai Emery totally changed the game and put Chelsea on their back foot, and they never got off the back foot from that moment on. And Villa, honestly, despite what XG may or may not say, probably should have had more than the 2 goals they scored. So it was a brilliant move from Unai Emery. It worked to perfection, and it worked once again. I mean, how many times have we said this so far this season? Almost immediately, a player comes on or multiple players come on, and you see a change and you see a goal from Villa. I mean, I think it was 4 minutes after Watkins hit the pitch that he scored a goal.
Yeah, it's an insane number of substitutes that score under Unai Emery. The other thing that I thought it enabled us to do, in addition to kind of going man for man across their back line, it moved our passer closer to the attacking areas, right? Yuri Tielemans is going to be that fulcrum. And Rodgers was playing so high with Daniel Malen in the first half, trying to spring that counter and get in behind, that you look at the gap between them and who's making the pass, typically Yuri Tielemans, 30 yards, right? 40 yards. You move Yuri another 10, 20 yards closer to them. All of a sudden now the whole field opens up. And the Chelsea backline needs to respect the pace a lot more of Morgan Rogers on the left and Jadon Sancho on the right than what they might do when it's Emi Buendia and John McGinn. So, I think that is a big part of what made it successful. Not only could we then go man to man and kind of stretch them out a little bit, but the guy seeking the passes doesn't necessarily need to spray the ball quite as far to make those things happen and ultimately make the counterattack work. And you saw it almost instantaneously, right? 3 minutes later, Villa had that beautiful play from the back to the front through the middle. Unfortunately, the one running in on goal trying to chip Sanchez is Boubacar Kamara, who, despite a stunner a couple weeks ago, is not necessarily known for his finishing. But I think that was the first kind of shot across the bow that let Chelsea know, hey, you're up 1-0, but like Villa are in this one.
And the other thing that we have to mention is that Chelsea have given up so many points from losing positions this season, and they looked like a team. Once I know they said publicly, I think it was Caicedo said in the post game that even after Villa scored, they still felt like they controlled the game. Well, it didn't look like that at all to me. It looked like they were shrinking and Villa were growing. And we've seen that a bunch of times this season with Aston Villa, and it seems like that this is sort of a trend with Chelsea where they lack the experience so far that Aston Villa honestly have right now in inexperienced players like Kamara, Tielemans, McGinn, Watkins. Rodgers not as much, but he's really played in Europe now for a couple of seasons, right? So they've got these players that have a good deal of experience and understand how to see these games out and don't panic when they go down a goal. And also the other thing that comes with that is the confidence to know that you're never out of a game. And McGinn talked about that in the post-game press, that the biggest thing they have is a collective belief that they can win any game they're in.
Yeah, I don't really buy that from Caicedo. I mean, like I said, the subs come in 60th minute, Kamara's through on goal, probably should finish, right? And I don't even put that as much on him as I think that was really great goalkeeping by Robert Sanchez.
He played really well, actually.
Yeah,
he played really well.
Sometimes you gotta just tip your hat and say the goalie played fantastic. But 62nd minute, great assist by Rodgers to Ollie Watkins. Yes, it's certainly a lucky bounce as it ricochets off Sanchez off of his knee into the net, but hey, he put himself in that position with an amazing first touch to kind of spring himself in on goal. 65th minute, beautiful opportunity, falls to Ian Maatsen. Again, I think you have to say great goalkeeping by Robert Sanchez. Could Maatsen have squared it across the goal, maybe for an Ollie Watkins tap in? I think if he tries to do that and doesn't go off, we're yelling at him to just rip one at the net. So I'm not going to hold that against him. So 65th minute, there's another opportunity. I would say it took all the way till the 80th minute. So like 20, 23 minutes later for me to really feel like Villa's stranglehold on the game had kind of petered out. And I wouldn't say that it necessarily swung back to Chelsea at that point. It just kind of felt like the two teams got to a point where they traded their slugs and kind of said, you know what, we're both good playing out for a 1-1 draw at this point. They both kind of seem to realize, hey, we can't keep up this breakneck pace. And yet a couple more changes come on. Dean and Bogard for Maatsen and Kamara. And Ollie Watkins gets the header for a second.
Terrible defending by Chelsea on that.
How is he that open?
And like we've talked about before, though, Ollie Watkins is much better with his head than people realize. And to give Watkins credit on that goal, he absolutely powered that thing in. But Awful defending. I think it was who was it? Was it Caicedo that was marking him? I don't remember.
No, it was I forget who. Keep going. But
The
no,
point is,
it was one of their defenders.
the point is that he doesn't even jump. Watkins is the only player jumping for that ball. It was incredibly poor defending, but I will take it. And
Sure.
I'm like, how many times do we have? I mean, we talked about the goal that Villa gave up was poor defending and poor goalkeeping. So you're essentially giving that one back. But it was absolutely a defensive mistake that led to that goal. But credit to Watkins for finishing it well.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to do this now because we are the lukewarmiest of lukewarm podcasts. Anyone who's out there saying Ollie Watkins is back, this is what's going to spring him on already. We've had this happen twice already this season, and he hasn't scored for 5, 6, 7, 8 games afterwards. So
I hope it does.
I will say the same thing that I said after Brighton. I will wait to see if he scores again against Arsenal and the game after that before I say that he's officially back. Even before he got that header, he ultimately did have the step on Badiashile and should have ripped that one, and ultimately didn't take the shot, didn't take the opportunity, tried to cycle it back around. Cross gets blocked and ultimately out for a corner. So, like, luckily it all played out, but even in the game that he had already scored, still showing some signs there of his lack of confidence, lack of sharpness, lack of ability compared to the Ollie Watkins that we've seen in years past.
But we've talked about that for a long time. Just let it rip, man. Just let it rip. You're a good enough player that I trust you to take those chances, and I'm sure the boss does too. Just let it rip and score. And if you don't score, at least move the keeper. Make him do something.
I agree. The only other thing that I want to talk about in the game was something interesting, and I don't necessarily know if this is just, I haven't seen enough Chelsea games to say this is something that they do versus something that they thought they could take advantage of with Aston Villa, but getting countered off our offensive corners again was an issue. It seemed like every time Sanchez caught the ball, he sprinted to the front of the 18-yard box and released somebody, and it led to an opportunity going the other way. Again, could just be something that Chelsea does, but it is something that I'm going to have my eye on with Aston Villa to see if it's something that we're leaving ourselves exposed to. Sure. Also led to one of the most hilarious moments I've seen in recent football when he just slipped and went flying over the line for a handball.
Yeah. That was that was toward the end of the game, right?
That was the 89th minute. Yeah.
But yeah, I noticed the same thing though, that on our attacking corners, on Villa's attacking corners, every time Sanchez got the ball, it was an immediate counter, and you're sprinting back toward your own goal, which is never a position you want to be in, right? So yep. I think that's definitely something to watch out for, and definitely something to watch out for given I know we're not there yet, but given the next opponent and how if there's anybody that's going to take advantage of a weakness you have, it's going to be a team like that, right? They will exploit that weakness because they're going to be relatively passive in a lot of the other parts of the game. They're not exactly creating a ton and finishing a ton, but where they have their opportunities, they're going to take them.
Yep, absolutely.
In Arsenal, sorry.
So, Chris, good points, bad points. Let's start with the good points. We'll end with the bad since this is a good victory. 11 wins in a row, first time since the early 1900s. I also want to talk a little bit about Amadou Onana. I think this game was a testament to how impactful he is in Villa's midfield. I know he's a guy that you've been high on for quite a while. I don't think we necessarily give him enough credit for how much he disrupts what other teams are trying to do with how good he is defensively, but also with how good he is offensively. I just noted by the 87th minute, he had been on for something like 32 minutes by that point, I think, or 30 minutes on the dot. Chelsea were not able to get out. since he got on. And that was the point where he made another thundering challenge on Moises Caicedo as he tried to turn and go. His athleticism is pivotal, but his ability also to carry the ball into attacking spaces and link up with Yuri Tielemans in the 10, super clutch. So, he gets a lot of stick probably for his fitness record with Aston Villa, but my God, what a player when healthy and fit.
Yeah, I think you nailed almost everything. I think the one thing that you maybe glossed over a little bit, his defensive positioning is so good, and his ability to make a challenge cleanly without fouling in many cases, to stop a counter or to win the ball back in the midfield is really something. And that comes down to his physical frame and athletic ability, like you mentioned. But then, like you said, and like I've been saying since I watched him live, he is better in attack than he's given credit for, I think. He can carry the ball, like you said. We're starting to see now a lot more of that passing that I saw in the early going in the friendlies. So I think what we're seeing is a relatively young player, not the youngest player ever, but a relatively young player. What's he, 25, I think?
Younger. I want to say he's like 23.
Yeah, rounding into form here with Unai Emery. And I think it's another player that was always very good or had the physical skills, right? But now with Emery, you are seeing him unlock another level of his ability. And I think hopefully he's a big part of this defensive midfield for a long time to come.
So he's 24. Agree with everything that you said. Also want to add, though, what a great guy in the locker room.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome glue guy. You see at the end, Ollie Watkins has the 2 goals. Who's the one who's essentially dragging him over to the Villa fans and getting him to do the celebration, to crown him as king, like all that kind of stuff? It's Amadou Onana. And so I think, his ability to bring positive vibes to the locker room seems like just a great human being.
Yep. Also has a lovely singing voice.
Also has he speaks like 7 languages. Like,
5.
What a human.
5 languages, yeah.
Oh, well,
and he's learning Spanish.
Yeah,
he's learning Spanish. He wants to speak to Unai in Spanish. Yeah,
he may already be there. That was something that came out, I think, early last season.
Yeah, it was last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, great human, great guy for the locker room. Really, really happy to see his growth and development. The other one, the other person I want to shout out, Robbie Mustoe on the NBC commentary. He said this at halftime and then again at full time. I noticed it. It's been clipped. It's all over Villa Twitter, so I'll kind of gloss over it. But, he said at halftime when Villa were down 1-0, I think Villa actually have Chelsea kind of right where they want them. They've sat back, they've soaked it up, they're ready to come on in the second half. And he's the first person to kind of say, hey, this Villa slow first half, strong second half pattern that we've been seeing might not be Villa getting outplayed. This might be actually a concerted tactic by Unai Emery. And he kind of said, like, this is what we expect out of them. They know that they have the fitness. They know that they have the strings that they can pull from the substitutions bench to ultimately overrun teams in the second half. And so if we can kind of start slow, feel them out, let them press us high, know they can't do that for 90 minutes, we know when we can turn it on and we ultimately have the match winners like Morgan Rogers, in this case, like Ollie Watkins, to turn that game around. I think that leads into some of what we're seeing with expected goals. You give up a lot of opportunities of lower quality that can still tally up to a higher expected goals number. But, this isn't something new with Unai Emery either. And it might not be necessarily something that we saw in one game, but I have been thinking back to the previous holiday season with the back-to-backs over City and Arsenal, and how kind of like this one with Chelsea and Arsenal, we went all out against Man City. You saw us pressing relentlessly, playing through them, all that kind of stuff, to a dominant victory. And then what did we do when we beat Arsenal 3 days later off of that? We got a quick goal early on, first 15 minutes or something like that McGinn turn on the counter. And then we basically soaked up pressure all day long. It was the same kind of philosophy, but instead of in one game, it was over the course of two. And so I do think that that's something that we might see kind of replicated here over the holiday season. Unai Emery knows that we don't necessarily have the biggest squad of the size of Arsenal or something like that, where we can rotate out all 10 outfield players. So what can we do? Well, we can kind of, I won't say take it easy for half a game, but at least play a little bit more conservative to make sure that we have the energy to overwhelm people towards the end.
Load manage while still staying on the pitch, right?
Yeah,
That's
pretty
essentially.
much.
To
Thank you
use
for
an
putting that
American,
much more succinctly.
yeah, to use an American example though, Brian Windhurst once talked about how much LeBron James walked during games and how much he didn't exert effort unless he needed to. So that's sort of what you're talking about there. And I think you're right. And I think
for a decade.
yeah, I think that was a great call by Robbie Mustoe and a good shout from him to do that. I have nothing more to add on that. The one thing I want to add that wasn't on the rundown, and I'm sorry to do that, but a good point. It's not yet calendar year 2026 in this season, and Aston Villa have already beaten 5 of the supposed Big Six. The only one that's missing is that Liverpool 2-0 loss. So you can't really be upset about 15 from 18 off of those teams, especially given where they're all sitting in the table right now.
Yeah, and as we kind of wind down the year, you see all the numbers coming out. Villa are fourth since Unai Emery took over. They're fourth in calendar year of 2025. So Villa belong here as long as Unai Emery is manager. This is not luck. We're not riding something out. As we have said repeatedly on this podcast, there's always some aspect to Aston Villa that belies the underlying statistical metrics. They find some loophole and exploit it. And so, you know what? If this XG thing kind of runs out, I guarantee you Unai Emery is going to find something else that's going to lead to another massive winning streak. The last good point that I do want to mention, though, Chris, that he's finally kind of getting his flowers a little bit. Victor Lindelof, deputizing for Pau Torres. I'm sure that Pau is pretty much going to walk right back into the team once he's fit again in early January. But to say that the left side of center back is maybe the position that I'm least uncomfortable with on a game to game basis. I mean, he's been great. Hasn't put a foot wrong. Never notice him, which is kind of what you want from a center back. Bravo, sir. Another Unai Emery reclamation project that has turned good and hopefully continues to be good over the course of the rest of the season.
100% agree.
Chris, the bad points, and we'll probably talk about more of this in our preview of the next match, but both Cash and Kamara picked up the yellow card that they were trying to avoid until the new year and will not be available for Arsenal. I think really that's the only negative that you can take from this game is that unfortunately we lose 2 of probably our players of the season, leading candidates for it. So that makes Tuesday all the more difficult.
Yes, it does. And I don't know how much Cash was avoiding it because that was a terrible challenge.
It's disgusting. Disgusting.
But hey, Matty Cash, I still love you. You've got no more ardent supporter than me, but that was not a good challenge.
No. So Chris, larger implication on the season, 10-point gap now on Chelsea, 7 on Liverpool in 4th. Villa have a 90 some odd % chance of finishing in the top 5, according to Opta. I believe they got a 40 some odd % chance of finishing 3rd, believe it or not.
I believe
actually, I mean, with where the table sits right now, I suppose I believe it.
Yeah.
It's interesting when we make these year over year comparisons because the year that on Boxing Day we could have gone top against Sheffield United, Villa actually had more points than we do right now. And so, with that one, with that season, us really kind of limping out of it and only getting over the line to 4th because Spurs were even worse than we were down the stretch. That does throw a little bit of caution to this of how long can this run keep going? we were actually better off and we finished worse off. So how's this season going to turn out differently? What I will say is that at that point, when we were willing to go top, the top 4, top 5, top 6 was a lot more congested than it is right now. We did not have that 10-point gap on 5th place at that point. So every year kind of plays out a little differently. The other thing that I will
we
add,
also didn't have the depth that we have now.
that's literally what I was about to say, and thank you for beating me to it. But this team feels a lot deeper. It feels like there are more pieces that we can go to, that we can rotate through to ensure that this run keeps going, as opposed to that year where we kind of started hot and just stayed hot until the wheels fell off around March. And that was because we didn't necessarily have other people that we can turn to. This year, I feel a lot differently about that fact.
100%. Yeah.
So, Chris, what one cold water for today before we get to the Arsenal match, and that is at J. I assume this is Villa till I die, but JVTID saying essentially that Jadon Sancho is growing week over week and will have a place in the starting 11 soon. Interesting take, Chris. Are you pouring cold water on this or not?
I'm pouring cold water on it because of he's going to get a spot in the starting 11 soon. Because who does he take out? Like that's going to be the question. You're going to start him over McGinn? You're not, right? You're going to start him over Rodgers? You're not. You're going to slide Rodgers to the center and McGinn to the left and put Sancho in? I don't think you are. I think he's going to remain a rotational piece. The thing I will agree with is that Sancho is getting better and better and better week over week. And I think there will be times where you could see him. I mean, you've already seen him start in Europe primarily, if I remember right.
Yeah, he'll probably get a Europa League game or maybe an FA Cup, depending
you'll
on
see him. You'll see him
is.
get some starting matches, but I don't think you're going to see him as a regular starter because as of right now, I don't think there's anybody you can pull off the pitch where he becomes where they become better with him on, and it would be McGinn off or McGinn, to the left and Rodgers to the center and Tielemans back and Tielemans off, so that it's okay to have good players, that come in off the bench. I feel like a broken record saying that. Yes, he will start occasionally, I think, in rotational situations, but I think you're a long way off from being a regular starter.
Yeah, and let's qualify how good he looks. I agree with you. He's getting better. He's having more moments, and we've called out on this podcast some of the ways that he makes Villa more effective when he comes on, whether it's through offering a little bit of width. We gave him credit for beating 2 or 3 men in the Arsenal game that ultimately led to one of the recycles that was one of the goals. So, he is a useful player, certainly. But over the course of this season, when he's been quote unquote good, they have been, to your point, in 20-minute, 30-minute, 35-minute cameos. And I will say they've been in 1 to 2 moments within those cameos where he otherwise feels largely anonymous. It's not like he's kind of come in the way even a Daniel Malin has and banged in 2 goals or, is causing all kinds of problems every single time he gets on the ball. And so that's also why I want to temper expectations here. One, so that they don't get too high and ultimately negatively impact him. To your point, if he just winds up being a great rotational piece for us and maybe over the summer he's available on a free to give us more depth, sure, I'd happily look at that. But I don't see anyone in the preferred starting 11 here right now. I'll kind of call that the Kamara, Onana, Tielemans midfield with Rodgers, Ali, and McGinn across the top. I don't see who he's playing better than, even in those cameos, to knock them out of that spot.
Exactly right.
So, Chris, let's look ahead to Arsenal on Tuesday. We literally just watched and previewed this game, so I don't necessarily see the need to do that again.
Did Arteta do a wrinkle though in their Brighton game where he kind of went to a back 3, back 5, depending on possession and defense? I thought that was an interesting thing to trot out.
It's funny that you say that, because the one thing that I will say is that they do seem to be running out of defenders. As soon as Saliba was back against Brighton, Gabriel was able to come off the bench. Calafiori injured, I believe, in the warm up. So Miles Lewis Skelly comes in, and they essentially played without a set right back. I wonder if Nkapie kind of goes there again. They kind of go to a back three. He's obviously played center back for the past few games, so interesting. And I'm not totally sure how Unai Emery will attack a back three as opposed to a back four. I can't say that we've played against one a bunch this season. But what I will say that's interesting is that, Villa the Villarati's number one enemy, XG philosophy, seems to be picking a little bit on a new fan base now, tweeting things like Arsenal players have scored 1 goal from 9.23 expected goals in the last 4 games, including penalties, tweeting out that their leading scorer in December is own goal with 4.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think people are taking this a little bit far, in that, everybody's tweeting now that they squeaked by Brighton, and but for an own goal would have drawn. Yes, they also outshot Brighton 24-8 and on goal 6-3. So yeah, it was an own goal, but to say, and I think they had 70% possession. To say that they squeaked by and not that it was a dominant game, that probably would have been unfair to be a 1-1 draw. I think that might be a little more where I'm falling out on this one.
I'd be more worried about the fact that you had something like 24 shots and only 6 of them were on target.
That's fair.
So that, if we want to look at the statistics, and I watched a decent amount of that game, Arsenal controlled the ball. They dominated everything. Interestingly enough, they started off pretty much in a low block, which I found hilarious, at home against, I think, the 9th team in the table. They put 10 men behind the ball. So I thought that was a funny thing, a strange thing to do, because, you saw Villa do that away against Chelsea, and it makes sense, right? It makes less sense for the title challenging team at home to do that against a team in the mid-table. But they did eventually come out and dominate the ball and hold possession. I do find it interesting that the bulk of their goals have been from set pieces still and own goals recently. But like I always say, put the ball in front of the net and find out what happens. And that's what they're doing, right? So they're still a very, very good and dangerous team with a lot of very, very good players. Declan Rice, Odegaard, Gyökeres, all these players that they've purchased over the last handful of seasons. I think it's kind of maybe ironic in a way that Arteta has spent so much money on his defenders and defensive mids, and he's running out of defenders, like you said, because they're all getting injured. I don't mean to laugh, but it is that has been such a focus recruitment-wise and in terms of player development that they brought in all of these players. Like I said in the preview pod of the last game, where you saw Arsenal fans saying well, we're without 2 of our 4 defenders. Yeah, man, but the guys that you're bringing in cost a combined 90 million pounds. So I'm not crying poor for you. So it's a good thing for Villa that they are stretched so thin defensively, but I am still concerned about their ability to create, and particularly their ability to create on set pieces, because once again, that is an Achilles heel for Aston Villa.
Yeah, especially with both of those big center backs back. I assume since Gabriel was able to get 20 some odd minutes over the weekend that he'll be in to start on Tuesday. And so, like I said, it will be interesting as we turn to the Aston Villa side of things. You mentioned them starting in a low block against Brighton. If that's the case, I have to imagine they're going to do the same against Aston Villa and try and defend that, or I shouldn't say defend, try and protect that back three, back four, whatever they ultimately decide to go with. Interesting, because that's actually what Arteta was criticized for in the last game against Aston Villa. Again, similarly, injuries in the defense. They started low. They were drawn out a little bit too much, kind of pushed those fullbacks high and wide, and that's ultimately where Villa were able to exploit them. So has Arteta kind of learned from that and said, you know what, hey, we're going to be even more pragmatic in this one. We're not going to let them draw us out, and we are going to look for those balls to Gyökeres over the top into the channels and try and create some opportunities that way, off of the set pieces, off of the corners, things like that.
I'm not as sure that he'll go that route, only because in the 5 years he's been the manager, and I'm not saying this as an insult, he is a very conservative manager.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think he goes more conservative in this
Yeah.
one, despite them being at home.
Yeah, like that's uh, he he is not a risk taker. As I said in the pod, in the reaction pod to the last game, he seems so concerned about giving up a goal that sometimes I think it costs him. And here's the thing about not being drawn out, okay? That's a really difficult thing to do discipline wise from any team, because what Villa did in the last game was just hold the ball in the final third. I'm sorry, in their own third, pardon me, until Arsenal moved up to create space behind. And it's difficult to get your players to hold their water, so to speak, and stay in shape and not create those gaps in the middle of the field. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to know in the first 15 to 20 minutes what Arteta's reaction to the last game is and what potential wrinkles Unai Emery has. Because does Unai Emery take the game to Arsenal in this case, try and get an early goal on the road, right? And then sit and soak up pressure. Because that I think you could see as well, where Villa kind of go all out in attack to start, like they did last year? Was that last year or 2 years ago, where they did the smash and grab
Yep.
to get a goal and then just sit and soak it up for 82 minutes or whatever it may be. But I think it's going to be an interesting chess match between two managers who have, I think, different styles and different ways about going about it.
How much also is Arteta thinking, hey, we're 2 points up on City? Yes, they have the better goal difference, but City don't play till Thursday against Sunderland. And so do we just get the point, and then the worst that City can do is draw level on points with us?
Yeah.
You know, he does seem to be very cognizant of where other teams are and how that impacts what they're going to do next, especially knowing that after Sunderland, Man City have Chelsea, then they have United. They've got a much tougher run of fixtures as opposed to Arsenal, who after this game play Bournemouth, who can't get a win anywhere.
Yeah.
Right now.
I mean, I still think you're better off from a mentality standpoint of just playing the game in front of you and not worrying about that.
I
But
agree.
I agree that he does seem, or he being Arteta, does seem to be very aware of what's ahead on the schedule and what the teams around him are doing.
Yeah. So what do you think Villa are going to do? I think this is a really interesting one to predict.
I do too. And some of it is there's a chance that Pau Torres is going to be healthy and able to play. Emery was kind of cagey in his response last week as to when he would be able to play. And he mentioned potentially before the new year. Well, we got one more game before the new year, right? So if Pau is available, I think he's going to be out there. Like you said, he walks into the starting lineup. But if he doesn't, and I'm going to assume he's not, I think you're going to go.
I am as well. I don't think he's playing.
Yeah, I think you're going to go Martinez, obviously. Right back is going to be Bogard or Garcia, but probably Bogard to me. Konsa, then Lindelof, Ian Matson, Onana and Tielemans, Rogers, Buendia, McGinn, and Watkins. But that I could see some differences there. That's the lineup I came up with based on health and availability from suspension.
That That is close to what I think will probably happen. Um, I'll just talk about a couple areas where I potentially have questions because mine is mostly the same. First off, I will say I have a lot more confidence in Bogart at right back this year than I did last year. Just because he's shown so much more maturity in midfield. Do I want him there as a week in, week out starter like it seems like we were testing for a little while? No. But can he fill in there for a game and do a job? I think so. Um, I'm interested to see if Ian Maatson starts again since Unai has pretty consistently been rotating the left backs between Premier League and Europe, and obviously Maatson seems to now be the first choice in the Premier League, played well against um, Bukayo Saka previously, and we've talked about how he seems to be the pacey, tricky winger guy. I do wonder though, with him going so long against Chelsea, if Unai will switch it up, put Luka Dean in there to just kind of keep everything in front of him, especially knowing that we're away from home. Um, and also Bukayo Saka hasn't necessarily been the goal assist threat that he's known for in really all this calendar year. I think he's only got a couple goals from open play. So maybe
Still
there's
a
a little
dangerous player though
concern.
for me.
Dangerous player, but maybe a little less concerned. Um, the other one potentially though is knowing how we might want to attack Arsenal and because of the enforced changes that we've had, he started the Chelsea match. I wonder if Buendia comes out, McGinn moves to the middle, and I know we're moving a player that has been very effective at that right wing as an out ball, but I wonder if we do Rogers left, McGinn middle, and Daniel Malen on the right wing with Ali Watkins up top. And the reason why I would do this is because Arsenal do not have outside backs. They're playing someone out of position there, or they're going to three center backs who don't necessarily have the pace or the positioning to cover down those wide channels. And so I wonder if moving McGinn centrally and adding a little bit more pace on the wings allows us to be more devastating on the break, combine a little bit more, and hit Arsenal in some areas where they might not be feeling as secure. And so that could be a good opportunity to really switch things up. If Arteta is going to completely switch up his defensive system and go to three at the back, why don't we completely switch up our defensive system and kind of get Daniel Malen in there on the right wing and see what we can create that way?
I think that also interestingly, like, kind of piggybacks off of what I had mentioned earlier. If Unai Emery decides to go for it in the early going and soak up
Yeah.
pressure, that'll be the lineup I think you see. I think if you see Buendia and McGinn out there, you're looking for Daniel Malen relatively early in the second half to really start attacking some tired legs and go that way.
Probably true. I do think you're right. Arsenal will probably start a little bit conservative. I think both teams honestly might start a little bit conservative, kind of feel each other out, see who's willing to go for it a little bit more. Hopefully Villa are able to draw Arsenal out so they can get in behind them a little bit more. That would be my preferred approach to this game. I'm okay to kind of ride it out for a half again and then see what we can do in 45 minutes of football in the second half. So I would expect another slow start. This isn't one where I think we need to jump on them early.
I think you're probably right. What do you have for a final score in a pretty big game, really, if we're thinking about it?
So given their injuries in the back line, we are away. I told all my Arsenal friends, you're gonna get us at the Emirates. Um, I do think the winning run comes to an end. I don't think the unbeaten run comes to the end. I'm gonna say 1-1 draw.
I have 1-1 as well. I think Villa are playing very well and full of confidence at the moment, and Arsenal have been doing a lot of winning. Don't get me wrong. And I'm watching that much more from afar than I am watching, because I watch every Villa game, right? And I don't watch every
Sure.
Arsenal game. It doesn't feel quite the same. And when you read stuff online, I think some of this, and I've talked about this before, some of this comes down to mentality. Emery is very much focused on the next game and nothing else. If you hear him talk about it, he says We're not in a title race. We're the 7th best team in the league a couple of years back was what he was saying, and all that sort of stuff. The Arsenal approach seems to be different. And some of that is pressure from the fans and the board and all those things. And the amount of money spent, they expect to have a title, some silverware for their almost 800 million pound net spend. That's a real figure, by the way, over the last 5 years. So the locker room seems to almost be on like a knife edge, and every single result. I mean, you saw when they lost to Villa, you would have thought they lost a cup final or a Champions League final or something like that, with the way they reacted. So I think the mentality between the two teams is different. And obviously I'm extremely biased, and I prefer Unai Emery's mentality of keeping his guys level and just looking ahead to the next opponent and nothing beyond that. And to his credit, at least publicly, that's the image they mirror. They say the exact same thing. And Arsenal mirror the extremely emotional or extremely emotionally invested approach that seems to come from their manager. I don't know that personally. It seems like it. I mentioned to you this really started to become a focal point with Arsenal for me a couple of years back when they celebrated a last-minute win away at Luton Town, who I think the entire squad cost £8 million, and they had never been in the Premier League. And Arteta celebrated so much he got a yellow card. Like that's not Champions mentality to me, And it's a good thing to celebrate wins. Don't get me wrong. But you also have to understand, like, that's a team you should put to the sword and kill, and move on. And when you need a last minute winner, you celebrate, you move on. You certainly don't run onto the corner flag like Arteta did and jump on the pile. So I wonder about that mentality from them.
I'm completely with you, and I think we'll learn a lot more about that mentality on Tuesday. I don't think we said it at the outset, 3:15 Eastern time, by the way.
That's right.
Chris, anything else on our preview of this one?
I don't think so. I'm really looking forward to it. And I guess we'll have one more pod before the new year, huh?
Yeah, probably one more Tuesday evening. YouTube shout outs, new subscriber, Mr. Lanji, I believe is how it's pronounced. Welcome to the crew. Hope you stick around. And yeah. So, Chris, we will talk once more. Well, we talk again. We say this every pod. We talk every day, but we will talk publicly one more time, hopefully before the new year. Recap Arsenal. At some point, we'll get a preview of our next match as well. But until then, Chris, as always, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.